In the darkest corners of the podcast dungeon, you have come across another goddamn horror podcast. With Graham Fay, Jonas Barnes, and Ryan Danley.
Welcome, everybody, to yet another goddamn horror podcast. I am one of your hosts. I am Ryan Danley, coming to you from a cloudy, meh, Portland, Oregon day. It looks like a fucking Tim Burton movie out here, which is, so that makes today like an odds of it being like 1 out of every 8 being decent. My little Tim Burton jab. How's it going in Brooklyn, Graham?
It's fine. It's cold. It got real cold real quick. I thought I was gonna die. I was outside for about 2 minutes last night at like 2 a.m, and it was brutal. And it's just cloudy and gross. Oh,
Graham, I'm gonna blow your fucking mind here, man. I'm gonna
go
blow
for
your
it.
mind. They make shirts that have sleeves.
I've heard of such a thing.
I heard
they come with super long ones that go down.
Yeah, some of them come all the way to your wrist.
I gotta look into those.
Like behind, and you can almost be like a cool goth kid and and get ones that are really long, and you can cut thumb holes in it, and you can put it behind it.
That's actually a great idea.
And then you hang out by like the smoking area by your high school. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, it's pretty cool, then.
My smoking area is just by the trash. Outside the building.
Jonas, how's the other side of Brooklyn?
Oh, the other side of Brooklyn's just cold. Cold, cloudy, but I can't complain. It's my type of weather. I'm into it.
Have you heard of these sleeves on shirts? Have you heard of this?
I have. I just actually busted out the hoodie for the first time in a while. So it's getting there.
I have a Champion hoodie. But like what's cool about Champion is I've lived through two different Champion eras. I lived in like New York hardcore, early 90s Champion era hoodies, like Gorilla Biscuits, Champion era. And now it's like coming back. So I'm like, oh, cool. But I'm also now like a mid 40s dude walking around and like a kid. It's pretty dope. You know what I mean? If you dress like you're 16, you'll never grow old. Well, we could continue talking about this, or we could talk to our absolutely incredible guest that we have here. What do you guys think? You guys think we should just keep talking about clothing, or should we maybe
with the guest? I'm tired of getting bagged on for not having sleeves.
Welcome to the show. Lucien, what would you call yourself? What do you call yourself? What is your job?
I am the co-founder of and spokesperson for the Satanic Temple, and I'm also the front person for the superstar band Satanic Planet with Justin Pearson, Dave Lombardo, and Luke Henshaw. That's
got to be such a great thing, such a great perk of being with the Satanic Temple and getting to go jump in this band with like legends like those guys. We had Justin on the show, and I've been a big fan of his work since the struggle days, and he's just such a legit guy, and that's got to be so fun to work with those guys and do that.
Yeah, it was the result of me having done an interview with the UK metal magazine, and they were asking me what bands I like, and I had thrown in Dead Cross, and then Justin reached out, and I had been a huge fan of a lot of his projects for a long time too. So he came around to do a podcast interview with me in Salem, and then it was there. He came with Luke, who does Planet B with him, and then somewhere in the course of chatting, we talked about doing a project, and originally it was going to be spoken word, and then we just started working on music, and Dave Lombardo jumped in, and now it's a whole project when it was going to be just a one-off thing.
It's so good, and any of our listeners who haven't checked it out, please go check out the Satanic Planet. Like it's such like a perfect fall record. Like you get up in the Pacific Northwest and like drive to work in the morning, and you throw that on, and it's so like spot on. It is like it's just like it hits like all the right notes. You guys killed it on that.
Yeah, we threw it
Yeah, I
on for
gotta say,
Halloween.
I think we really mastered the low BPM, hardcore, grinding, kind of just relentless driving type sounds that, we started out with really low BPM type backgrounds, and to hear them evolve into something that was just raucous and horrifying was really gratifying.
For sure.
I feel like it takes, I think like it takes something different to do it in the low BPM than it does for something that's like 200 BPM per minute.
For sure. Yeah. It's like a ritual. Like it feels like a brutal ritual throughout the whole thing. I love it.
So you but did you have music experience before that, or was it just like that was your first?
Not with vocals, and I didn't take too many risks with the vocals on the first album,
Right.
so I really felt out of my depth there.
Right.
But I had messed around a lot with electronic noise and doing my own independent soundtracking of silent films and other things I didn't really release but experimented with. And there's another guest vocalist from the Satanic Temple on the Satanic Planet album, Shiva Honey, and she and I had worked on stuff and had done a couple live shows before where we actually did live soundtracking, electronic soundtracking for silent film. And but this, a project of this magnitude is something entirely different.
Sure. I mean, you got to walk into that room with those people and be like, wow. This is the deep end of recording and doing art, because those guys are all very experienced.
Yeah, but we immediately worked together really well, and it was kind of amazing because we were going to do this spoken word material, so I had this stuff written up, and then Luke and I start exchanging these sound samples, and they're getting more musical and structured, and I was too reserved when I was alone, to really lay down much. So we got into the studio, and there's already buzz around this idea that we're making an album. So we had to make good on something, so I was nervous about it. And then we get in the studio. I had no idea what I was doing. And I'm just listening to these parts and trying to put vocals to it. So I was kind of writing the vocals in real time while we're in the studio, and then we're plugging this stuff into the sound booth and then constructing it on the spot, so it was kind of a fast process, but we also just kind of agreed really fast on what was sounding good together and what was working and that kind of thing. And so, it's like if I get on a Fox News interview or something, you're really nervous to do it, but if you're reserved or if you show nervousness or if you kind of hold back in ways that are counterproductive, you're going to ruin it. So, I just had to suddenly risk looking like a complete fool going into the sound booth and trying to lay down vocals, but couldn't let that stop me either.
You were like,
and I think it worked out.
Oh, I think it worked out amazingly, and I agree with that.
Sure.
It's true with like all art, as Jonah's going to tend to too. Even with like stand up, it's like you got to go up there and put it all out, or it just doesn't. They just won't connect with you, and that's a big part of art is like not being. It's like I call it the dropping in on a half pipe thing. You know what I mean? Like if you pull back, you're gonna eat it. You're gonna eat it. The board's gonna. You have to commit. You know what I mean? So it's like all those things. It's like I'm sure there's like some life lesson in there, but learning's hard.
Skateboarding lesson's good enough.
With comedy too, it's like you jump up there and it's everything is like it's whatever until you get that first laugh. Once you get that first laugh, it's fine. But before that, it's still like, all right, how deep is this water that I'm in? Like you you never know. Each audience is different on it.
Exactly.
And are you doing another album?
Oh yeah. We're working on another album. We're kind of a little behind on what we had planned there because everybody was really excited about the idea of working on a second album right away. And Lombardo, has been really hyped about working on the second album, which is great because the guy's
That's
working on
super
so
cool.
many projects. He's a really,
Yeah.
famous and talented musician. And just the same, he's really excited to get to work on the second Satanic Planet album, because this time he's going to be working with us during the creative process. On the first one, we pretty much laid everything out. He came in after the fact and he really made a difference in the final mixes and everything else, but he wasn't there at the point where we were actually writing the material. So we've already laid down some new tracks for the new album, and having his creative input is a whole new dimension now for Satanic Planet. That's really, I think, going to take it over the top. And I've had more time to think about and experiment more with vocals and things like that. So I think the second one is going to be, as much as I love the first one, I'm proud of how it turned out. I think the second one is going to be much better, and I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm super excited for it too.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, like Dave Lombardo, I mean, his history speaks for itself, and I think what almost gets overlooked is just how wicked talented he is as a musician. And I've seen him play a few times, and I'm
amazed at how his metal fans can treat him like shit for expanding his scope outside of drumming, because he only did live drums on one track for the Satanic Planet album.
Right.
And hear some people crying about that, to me, is just amazing. It's like, if you want to listen to Slayer again, nobody's stopping you. Listen to Slayer again. But
there's plenty of it. There is plenty of it. There's there's plenty of Slayer. And metal fans, sorry, Graham, but like to complain. You know what I mean? Nothing's ever good enough, and nothing's ever, you know what I mean? But I think all purists are like that. I think purist is just another term for
I was going to say
disappointed.
That every scene has its purists like that. It's type of fundamentalist,
Exactly.
I am in no way a purist
at all. Something must work within these defined confines of a genre. How do you grow from that?
Yeah, my favorite bands are the ones that put out albums that don't sound like anything like what they've put out before. Like, I love the progression in especially metal, because now with all the subgenres, you can mix so many different types of genres to make something cool and new and exciting. So yeah, weird puritanism is weird. Go ahead, sorry.
What kind of stuff do you listen to in general?
Me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm really curious. I really love the avant stuff, avant noise. I really liked avant industrial, and by that I mean the really kind of experimental things where you're listening to sounds and you don't know where they came from, but they set a really interesting kind of environment with the looped grooves they create or whatever else, making musicality out of chaos. I really like that kind of stuff. I go through different phases when I'm listening to stuff. I can listen to everything from classical to industrial to more mainstream rock. I guess if we're talking really going out of bounds, the only kind of country I've ever appreciated would be Johnny Cash or the senior, what's his face?
Hank Williams.
The senior Hank Williams. Hank Williams Jr., I don't know. Talent really skipped a generation, but the third has done some stuff that I guess, that sounds worth hearing. But, I try to appreciate whatever I can, I'm not one of those types who, just because it's like a Hollywood blockbuster movie, that I feel I'm obligated to hate it, or because it's top 40, I'm obligated to hate it. But I have to say, for the most part, I hate those things.
Yeah, I hear you there.
Everybody's always surprised.
I mean, we're horror fans. We embrace the low budget. We embrace the non-blockbusters all the time. Like, that's That's what we
We're
love.
also big
definitely
fans
my
of like the
favorite
big.
type of viewing. And when it comes to stand-up comedy, sometimes there's nothing sadistically I like more than to see somebody absolutely die on stage cracking the dumbest jokes.
Well,
Some of my
well, you,
favorite YouTube videos are people just totally failing on stage. There's one where a guy gets up there and he just starts talking about how his girlfriend broke up with him and he's taking it day by day. And there's nothing funny about what he's saying, yet it's hilarious.
you should follow me around.
Looking for a joke, and this guy is kind of shitting on the entire party.
Exactly. Although I think as comedians we've all been there, so some of us more than others, like myself. But it's no, I get it. It's a good bomb is good for the soul. You know what I mean? Like it's sometimes you gotta roll with it. You know what I mean? Like you gotta get off and be like, okay, well that was that. You know what I mean? I got that out of the way. So on the Satanic Temple, if people are unfamiliar at this point, which is, I'm sorry if you are, if any of our listeners are unfamiliar, and this is going to be like probably the most standard question you'll get out of this entire interview or discussion. What is Satanism and what is it not?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people who try to claim the title of true Satanist. And as soon as the Satanic Temple was founded in 2013, the Church of Satan, founded in 1966, were claiming that we were imposters, of course, because they're the only true Satanists, and they codified it. And they're kind of a fake organization that's just a Twitter feed at this point, pretending to be the old the old Church of Satan from 1966. So it's kind of ironic, but it's like saying that one sect of Christianity is true Christianity, and bothering to get into that argument at all shows some kind of attachment, I guess, to one or the other. And those kinds of claims to authenticity generally don't mean to anybody outside the group, and I think it's kind of juvenile for somebody to say there's no other way to look at this, especially in Satanism, when you have this long history of Christians insisting that the only true Satanism would be theistic and would be a kind of veneration of cruelty and anti-human behavior and whatever it is that's considered Christian, they're against it type of thing. But we're a non-theistic religious group, which means we don't venerate a personal Satan. We don't believe in Satan as a supernatural deity, but Satan kind of contextualizes our beliefs, the way we order ourselves in the world, our ethics, the kind of community that we rally to, as an icon and a set of iconography. And it says a lot about where we fall in the kind of foundational socio-political myth, the idea that there is an ultimate higher power that everybody needs to worship and venerate. And we feel that's indicative of a whole kind of social order in which people live under a theocratic rule. And I think we're seeing a rise in theocratic efforts in the United States and in the world today, which kind of, I think, in a lot of people's minds, makes it more intuitive as to what the value of non-theistic Satanism is and where we fall on certain issues. And I think, the rise of Donald Trump and things like that, the rise of the theocratic movement in the United States has really contributed to the growth of Satanism and the growth of the Satanic Temple today, because I do kind of think we would just be viewed as an obscure and bizarre kind of cultural movement that people might not pay as much attention to if it weren't for the necessity of our kind of political activism now, which is what we're mostly known for, where politicians are trying to pander to evangelicals mostly by opening up public forums to religious voices and add more privileges to religious claims and that kind of thing. And by constitutional law, if you offer certain benefits to one religion, they must be equally available to others. And that's where the Satanic Temple comes in. We'll say, okay, if you're putting up your Ten Commandments monument on public grounds, we're putting up our Baphomet monument, a satanic monument alongside of it. And of course, the politicians that move for the Ten Commandments monument to go up, they try to keep us out, which isn't constitutional, and we kind of highlight that diminished religious liberty in their efforts by asking for equal treatment at all. And so that's what's really put the Satanic Temple on the map and has forced people to consider the limits of religious liberty and to consider the meaning of Satanism in general now. Learning different things about what Satanism means to people who actually practice it, as opposed to what they learned in the 80s and 90s during the hysteria of the Satanic Panic, when everybody thought we were hiding backwards messages in music, engaging in infant sacrifice and using mobile crematoriums, which disposed of all the evidence, and had this New World Order movement. The whole QAnon conspiracy narrative existed well before QAnon. It just kind of took the Trumpism slant in recent times.
Yeah, it's and I think that and I'm glad you bring that up, because really a lot of people don't realize that QAnon is basically an extension of is like the new leg of the Satanic Panic. That it's like, it is really just like every so often they reform these ideas and remarket it when it gets exhausted. When everybody's like, oh, okay, well, there aren't really preschools with like flying preschool teachers, like, and underground caverns. That's not like a real thing. So how can we now change this up to make it to a more palatable?
Yeah, but at the point where you have people in Dealey Plaza waiting for the reemergence of JFK Jr. after his death in 1999 to come take the reins of the empire of the United States and hand it back to Donald Trump, you can't say it's any less crazy.
Oh, I don't think it's any less crazy. I just think it's repackaged crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it's like as a it's just like, okay, well, that sounds, the preschool sounds crazy to us now, but now we're going to do now we're gonna be like yeah, like there's a magical JFK. I don't know. Like, it's like,
yeah, a lot of people don't want to face the fact that the original Satanic Panic, if you want to call it original and not just an extension of older witch hunts too, right, but the Satanic Panic of the 80s and 90s actually had a strong left-wing component to it. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of people who identified as feminists at the time who had a different conception of feminism than you'd recognize as feminism today. They were very anti-sex work. They were very anti-porn, and they wanted people to realize that women had been abused, children had been abused, and people weren't acknowledging that. And that's a noble cause. And it turned into that type of thing where any claim of such needed to be accepted at face value, because the idea was that these claims were often not false, which was probably true, and they were often ignored, which was also probably true. But as soon as the conspiracy theorists realized that any claim can be made and taken at face value so long as you attach this claim of abuse upon it, they take advantage of that. And that's why you see QAnon now jumping on to believe the children and saying that at the end of the day, they're just trying to protect children from child trafficking and stuff like that. That was an old tactic of the 80s and 90s Satanic Panic. In the old school of the 80s and 90s Satanic Panic, a lot of them are still around, and they've still been promoting these ideas, and they're appalled by the Trumpism, the political persuasion now of the resurgent Satanic Panic latching on to QAnon. So I think, we need to be vigilant no matter what side of the political spectrum we're on, and be sure that we're actually looking at the best available evidence, or we'll see this stuff happen again and again, moving back and forth on the political spectrum to either extreme side. And right now it just happens to be the far right Trumpers
Yeah,
Well,
and go for it, Graham.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's the kind of going back to the activism. That's what sort of got me into the Satanic Temple. Was for a long time, I was drawn to Satanism and Satan just as sort of aesthetically. Like I would carve pentagrams into desks in high school and stuff. Like it always felt more comfortable. I've always been very anti-religious, but it also, when I sort of started learning about the Church of Satan, I realized I shared a lot of ideals, but also they seemed mean-spirited. And so I just sort of considered myself an atheist.
Then you moved on to carving pentagrams into other school children's foreheads.
Right, exactly. No, and then I saw Hail Satan, the documentary, and what drew me to the Satanic Temple was the activism and the actual like boots to the ground, like doing something positive. It just felt supernatural, not super, but very natural. And it was like we became members, me and my wife, and I surprised her with a membership actually, and she was thrilled. So yeah, it's the activism.
Right. Yeah. My thinking is, why would you join an organization if it doesn't serve some kind of organized purpose? If we weren't organizing to do something good, if we weren't organizing to advance our rights in the world, why would we want anybody to even identify with us and perhaps just make themselves a pariah in the community? And at that point, you're just going to attract people who are using it theatrically like that, just to piss off their parents, scare their neighbors, that kind of thing. And I think that's the kind of market you would find within the Church of Satan, despite whatever efforts they were putting forward, just because if you're not doing anything, what else is it good for? And they famously attach themselves to a do-nothing philosophy. They argue all the time that politics has no place in religion and vice versa. And to the point that, on the face of it, you'll agree as a secularist, but at the point where, you have initiatives in place that limit your religious freedom because somebody else's religious freedom is viewed to be somehow more powerful than yours. When you see Christianity becoming this super category to the point where it has this unique ability to engage in speech, in free speech in a public forum, or it has the unique ability to impose reproductive rights restrictions and other such things, there comes a time where you have to say that, in order for me as an individual to, respect my religion or be able to practice it or feel comfortable, in this society, you need to take a stand. You need to take a stand for secularism. You need to take a stand for that separation of church and state, not just simply say, oh, well, because we're a religious organization, we're leading by example by not doing anything about it. Did I cut out or something?
Yeah, you're going
Yeah,
on.
you're back now.
Yeah, you're back now. But you got muted for a second.
Oh, sorry. I just went on this great florid tirade.
No, it's
really laid things out in the most kind of most coherent and understandable. But
No.
I guess we're just going to have to imagine it.
Well,
it was amazing.
What we heard was you brought up the separation of churches and state, which I guess, like you said, the Church of Satan was like, well, no, religion and politics have nothing to do with each other, but they 100% do. Like, there's elected officials screaming about how America is a Christian nation and it's printed on our money and all this stuff. So it's 100% now intertwined.
So as somebody who grew up in punk rock music and so, I gotta say hats off to you. There's been a lot of talk about how do we battle Christian supremacy in this country from a lot of different angles, from early metal, for some reason not so much newer metal, and like I think that like what I appreciate with the Satanic Temple and your vision is the you've taken like what I viewed as like bad about Satanism. Like I've always like appreciated Satanism, and I've always like like loved, I've always put 666 on stuff, and I've carved my share of pentagrams and stuff, and every password and name I use, and my AOL name was Demon Ryan 666. And I've always used it. But when I actually like was around, like kind of like, we I won't name them because it's just not worth it. But there's a big Satan Church of Satan guy in Portland, and I appreciate some of the stuff, but he's also like kind of a big fan of like Nazis and like these questionable feelings about like pedophilia and things like, you know what I mean? Like, and so like, then you go, okay, well, there's evil, and then there's like fucking like evil, you know what I mean? And so I appreciate that. I feel like the Satanic Temple has separated themselves from like that sort of like predatory sort of like oppressiveness, because like in and of itself, like there's supporting evil, and then there's supporting like the evil that will, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Well, if you want to get really into the history of modern Satanism, the brilliance of Anton LaVey was supposed to be that he took these terrible ideas and removed the bad elements from them, the counterproductive, really regressive elements, and just took the good and tried to turn it into a positive philosophy of self-empowerment and improvement. And he did that by taking this social Darwinist text, Might is Right, from the 1800s, late 1800s. And it was this racialist social Darwinist manifesto that said all these horrific things. And he took out these elements that were anti-religious and pro-individualist, and took kind of like this core social Darwinist philosophy and removed the racialism and things like that. And in his mind, he distilled it into the useful aspects of it, which were that, you have to treat the world as this kind of cutthroat, tooth and claw environment where the strong overcome the weak, and you need to be among the strong and powerful for your own good, and realize that people's motivations are selfish and that type of thing. And earlier on in my life, I agreed with that. That matched with what I had seen about the world. And later on, I came to disagree with that as well. And so LaVey kind of took from what looks to be this racist extreme right book, and in a lot of people's minds liberalized it. And there's a lot of people in the Church of Satan still who have a very liberal take on politics, but they still believe that the world is kind of, the social environment is this cutthroat, brutal world where altruism doesn't exist, and that everybody, even if they're acting altruistically, are acting upon their own selfish desires for recognition and that kind of thing. And they feel that this helps them manage the brutality of the world around them. I'm talking about the liberal elements of the Church of Satan. But also, of course, the fact that there's those roots of that philosophy coming from a book like Might is Right does also still draw a lot of people who would have sympathies towards extreme right-wing stuff too. And in fact, it can just attract people who like to be shocking and like to look at the extremes one way or the other. So you do have elements of that too, and but it's a very complicated world to navigate. Sure. Modern Satanism. And then we come along and we say, no, we think altruism and compassion do exist. And the research regarding evolution and reciprocal altruism and things like that show that we really have developed cooperative tendencies. And that's what's really helped us to thrive and evolve further. And we are very much social animals. And that doesn't take anything away from our Satanism being a left-hand path religion, which is about improving oneself as an isolate intelligence, not about yielding to this idea of a uniform one or wholeness or whatever else. But you can still be a community, you can still work collectively together to preserve individual rights and the ability of individuals to engage with the world on their own terms. And that's what we do. So we don't feel like we're taking away from Satanism in any way. In fact, if you look more at early Satanism and the romantic satanic movement in literature, Byron, Shelley, and political activists from that kind of literary movement, you'll see that there were a lot of socialistic tendencies and the idea of Satan as a liberator against a kind of tyrannical dictator, as kind of a motivating icon against an oppressive kind of social framework. So I feel like we're kind of more of a continuation of those earlier concepts of Satanism, and it's really, I feel, the LaVeyan pro-police state, kind of pro-autocracy philosophies that are really kind of an aberration in that modern satanic thread.
We actually had Sandora LaVey on the show, and she's a friend, and she had nothing but good things to say about you guys and you specifically. She absolutely adores you.
Oh yeah,
she also,
we love her too. She was recently back in Salem doing a performance for one of our events.
yeah, she did it for the Halloween weekend, right?
Yeah, and she came out of LaVeyan Satanism, and there's a lot of people come out of LaVeyan Satanism and do not see the Satanic Temple as being so bizarre from what they believe, because the overriding principle is being able to adjust yourself to the best available evidence. It's not hanging on like a fundamentalist to a social Darwinist philosophy when it isn't shown to work. And I think it's kind of ironic that I feel like that was the overriding principle in LaVey's philosophy, and now LaVey has a bunch of people who hang on to, you know, the words he said, like fundamentalists, and are unable to revise their thinking in the face of reality and new evidence. And I think that does more to dishonor him than anything else. There was, there are people who knew LaVey who I've talked to. Adam Parfrey, who used to run Feral House Books, he's since deceased, and other people who knew him, interviewed him, or whatever. And some of them seem to feel that he would like what we were doing. And I know other people in the Satanic Temple might be uncomfortable with that idea, viewing him as a right-wing character who latched on to Ayn Rand. But it's not about the politics. It's about how you come to your politics. And I tell you, people need to be a bit more flexible about allowing people to revise their beliefs in the face of evidence and allowing them into the fold, because I feel like the polarization we're experiencing right now demands that people stay on one side and can never be invited to the other, and that doesn't help anybody.
Not at all.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And honestly, like when you talk to Zanzora, she has the same message. She does a ton of activism work and a ton of what I mean. So I think in the basic, and it's what I like about the tenets of Satanism is like you lay it down, and I think some basic rules are really good for a lot of things, because like sometimes if you look at like Protestantism, okay, so there isn't a head church, and some people like that, but like evangelical Christian, which is a Protestant thing, has run rampant with because there isn't like a basic idea, and then it gives it an opportunity, gives all these things an opportunity to be like, I'm a racist or I'm a Nazi, and then I'll find something that I can manipulate into my thing, and that gets a little it's putting ideas out there is dangerous, you know what I mean, because people isn't. So when you do something like when you have the tenets of Satanism, which just which speaks to compassion and speaks to empathy and speaks to things like that, it's hard to it would be hard for like the majority of like the black metal scene who have claimed to be social Darwinists for a long time to attach to that, because they're like, oh yeah, we think that like being an oppressor is our right as a, and so I very much appreciate that. Put it in, and then it makes somebody like myself who during the Satanic Panic wanted everybody to think I was a Satanist, but you know what I mean, but later on just didn't want anybody to think I was a Nazi, you know what I mean? So it's because no, like the Nazis are like what we're like like Satan left, not that I believe in like a Satan, but if you listen to the story, like he left the tyrannical God, you know what I mean? So it's weird to then flip that around and find solace in a tyrannical God. But,
well, the way they've come to upholding or lionizing autocratic ideals in the Church of Satan is through this idea of individualism taken in a totally different way than we take it in the Satanic Temple. In the Satanic Temple, we advocate for everybody treating everybody as individuals, respecting everybody as individuals. The Church of Satan really focuses on this idea of stratification and that some people are lesser than others. And they've always tried to deracialize that and take away any kind of, ethnic components to that or cultural or whatever, focusing in on the intelligent versus the stupid in more the Randian fashion. And of course, there's a real problem of definition there because you never get quite a clear demarcation of who's worthy and who's not. But they do kind of then order the world into this environment in which certain people are worthy of ruling over others. And it doesn't take long before you get to that point where one person, has that superiority and by natural processes will prevail. So to the point where you could see, people in the Church of Satan lining up behind Trump on the idea that the fact that he made it there at all is evidence that he deserves to be there. That kind of backward philosophy about, power justifies itself. And if you're there, you deserve to be there. And if you're not, you deserve what's coming to you. And there was a lot of cognitive dissonance, I thought, when I was, meeting people in the Church of Satan and things like that, where it was like, there isn't embarrassment or shame within the Satanic Temple if you're working a low-wage job. We realize, people come to wherever they're at from different places, and different people have different advantages economically or geographically or whatever. And, you never know, who's working behind the counter at Dunkin' Donuts or whatever else. Could be a very well articulated person with a lot of thoughts and just hasn't had the advantages of higher education or whatever to get to a different rung in their career, things like that. The Church of Satan, I felt like there was a lot of embarrassment amongst the many people there who really did work low-wage jobs, work retail jobs, public service jobs, or whatever. And they seemed to be pretending they were something they weren't, that they were part of some economic elite or whatever. And you saw a lot of posing and pretending, that they were in this upper strata, just merely by having the ability to see outside the boundaries of Christian society, and they were part of this alien elite that were good enough to identify as Satanists, and that was enough, And I just feel like there was a lot of cognitive dissonance that really didn't look at the reality of where they were, and that their concept of elitism wasn't bringing them any closer to being within this upper strata that.
My name is Elia Lucero.
And this is Tavon Gonzalez.
And we are E&T Phone Home, two Brooklyn bartenders who work in a movie theater.
On our show, we talk about the charming innocence of Paul Rudd.
Movies, actors, and all the rabbit holes they lead us in.
Like Shia LaBeouf in Holes, or those poor ladies in Descent.
But besides Stanley Yelnats, we also talk about what we're reading and listening to.
Scarface versus Robin versus Batman.
In past episodes, we've spoken about the difference between a Heather and a Veronica with Susan Kent and Megan Plunkett.
Talked about zombie caper flicks with our friend Rachel Wilmer.
Or the daytime cults of Sweden with Graham Faye.
That nerd bro down with Omar Holman.
Yeah, we're just a couple of Renaissance nerds, so please join us on ENT Phone Home wherever you find your podcasts. Peace out, Cub Scout.
They were imagining.
They did have Sammy Davis Jr. I'll give him that. Sammy Davis Jr. was amazing, and I'm glad he found Satanism. It's one of my favorite facts.
Right. Whatever criticisms I might have about the Church of Satan, it does piss me off when biographies of Sammy Davis Jr., Jane Mansfield, or any of them try to diminish that by saying like, it was just a joke. It was just a one-time thing or whatever. It's like, oh, fuck you. You know, if you're not able to take a clear-eyed view of this person's whole life, you're going to bury that kind of thing. They bury people's atheism too, you know, and so biographies or whatever. And I think that's a disservice to everybody.
For sure.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, but like, it's one of my favorite Halloween facts for people is that, you know, like Dave Mustaine is a Christian and Sammy Davis Jr. was a devil worshiper. So, but that's just one of those things that I think people need to know. Did you grow up into horror movies, or did the attraction to Satanism?
Oh yeah. I definitely did grow up into horror movies. I grew up in Detroit, and there was Creature Feature would come on every Sunday, and they would play. I keep forgetting what the Led Zeppelin song was, but they would play like the interlude part of that song as though it were like horror music, and it's the part where, you know, the guitars are kind of going wild and he's going, and there's all that reverb and everything. And they would show different images of like universal monsters, and there would be trails as a still image of them moved across the screen. And they would sometimes play like, you know, credible movies from like the 30s and 40s. They'd play like the Universal horror films, Bela Lugosi and stuff like that. And they would also play, you know, just really low budget stuff that was available to them, I guess, because it was public domain. And it, you know, even as a little kid, I enjoyed laughing at really unconvincing low budget horror films, just for the fact that they were very ineptly done. And sometimes the really poorly dubbed Japanese films that would show some of the same stock footage over and over again. You know, like the same fighter jets launching to fight the giant monster again and again. And it became like a game trying to point that out. There it is again, you know? And I've never grown tired of that. And it wasn't until, and I felt like that was more kind of a personal fetish of mine until like Mystery Science Theater came out and made a whole show of just, you know, cracking jokes along with shitty films. And then when the coronavirus pandemic started, we started looking for ways within the Satanic Temple to keep people in communication, to build like an online platform. And we did put together the Satanic Estate, where now we have conferences and different in services and things like that. But it's on our streaming platform, TST TV, where I do live movie nights that are streaming every Wednesday evening, and I do triple feature crappy films, and there's just a sidebar chat where everybody cracks wise about it. We all kind of get stoned or drunk or stay sober and just involve ourselves in giving commentary on these films. And it occurred to me that, you know, in that kind of environment where it's more about the chatting than it is the watching the film, the worse the film, the better it is. And
absolutely.
That's really held true throughout the couple years now of streaming these films. And everybody thought after like a number of months that we would have to run out. But no, we're finding new classic, terrible films all the time. If I was trying to play good films, it would have ran out after a couple of weeks. But trying to find terrible films that are worthy of being laughed at, you know, in some films just kind of age into that too, you know, because I watch films now that aren't quite ready for movie night, but they will be once they're dated, you know what I mean?
What are some of the movies you've streamed?
Well, on Thanksgiving here, or the Wednesday here just before Thanksgiving, I had 3 films lined up, and I was going to do Thanksgiving, which is kind of a little standard issue, I think, for Thanksgiving, but I had misnamed the file, so we ended up watching a Spanish Dracula film with a little Cyclops child in it, which was called the Dracula Saga, where Dracula is just kind of this grandparent concerned about his daughter marrying this guy and all this stuff. It's a bizarre film. You know, they weren't trying to make it funny either by doing Dracula's Family or whatever. And those are always the best kind. You know, Thanksgiving, see, almost doesn't fit the mold because it knew it was over the top deranged.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Super self-aware.
Sometimes that annoys me. You know, I like the campy, shitty films that were trying to do it right. And we watched Blood Rage, which is a Thanksgiving film because the murder all goes down after, you know, Thanksgiving dinner or whatever, and there's these twin children, and they witness their mom getting porked in a drive-in theater or whatever, and then get to go on a murdering spree. But he blames his twin. So then, when he gets out of prison, gets out of his out of the mental home where he was put into as a child when he was framed for the murder by his brother, it becomes this big question, of course, of who's who and at what point is the other poses. But it had these great scenes in there, like this guy gets his beer chopped off by a machete. You know, he's holding a beer, and the antagonist chops his hand right off, and his hand's just kind of wriggling around the beer laying on the floor. And it just had these grotesque for the top murder scenes like that weren't convincingly done, which made it all the more hilarious. But the best, I think, the Thanksgiving film you need to watch every year on Thanksgiving is Blood Freak, which, if I understand correctly, was commissioned by some Christian group and directed by this dedicated nudist by the name of Brad Grinter, who made a short film, 10 minutes, about his nudism, and you know, took a very kind of silly academic approach to nudism and in understanding and accepting nudism. But Blood Freak is about this guy who gets hooked on marijuana. He meets up with these hippies, and he's a Vietnam veteran, but this is back in the 70s, so he's a young man. And he then starts eating this turkey at his job. He's being used as a guinea pig to eat these experimental turkeys who are on this new hormone therapy or something like that, which drives him to become, he at some point passes out after eating a turkey, or he's out on the farm. He passes out and starts convulsing, and he becomes this turkey-headed monster who needs to drink the blood of drug addicts to get his fix. So he's wandering around murdering these drug addicts and drinking their blood. And this is presented by a narrator as a plausible story of something that could happen in the world today. Given the drugs, given the drug addicts and experimental medications and things like that. It's kind of the perfect movie. There's like a scene, I think it seems like it goes about 8 minutes, where the guy gets his leg sawed off and he holds his leg and he's screaming, but every scream in this is just a looped single scream. You know, they really cut the budget on the audio too, and they really test your endurance with it. So this is like a kind of perfect movie to watch with other people, and it's just masochistic to watch on your own. And sometimes these films are like that. They're terrible to watch on your own. But when you're watching it with other people, you can laugh because you know, like, this 8-minute scene of a guy just holding his stump and screaming is coming up.
It sounds amazing. It sounds like it'll be my favorite movie.
Yeah. Other favorites of ours include like Ben and Arthur, which I think is available on YouTube even. And it's just this really overly dramatic gay film where, you know, the director is also the star of the film, and those are usually the best too. You know, when the director is also the writer, the producer, the person who financed it, and they're plugging themselves into their dream role, you know. And to that end, you'd have to love Neil Breen films. Do you guys know about Neil Breen?
No.
Let me see.
He's out of Nevada. He's out of Vegas. And in fact, he's working on a new film. And I tried to get him to allow Satanic Planet to do the soundtracking for it. And the fool has not responded. Low budget films where he casts himself as the action hero. And he's not your traditional action hero. I can't say you'd look at him and say this man would be an action star. And he really manages to attract the ladies, at least in these scripts, and you just have to see them to believe them. They're some of the best worst low budget films being made today. And I can watch them and say, man, who is this for? Who watches this stuff? But I have to realize that it's me. I'm watching this stuff all the time.
He's got a bunch of them. I'm looking at it right here. He's got two with Google entries, Fateful Findings and Twisted Pair. And yeah, he doesn't look like it's like like you got to give credit to people for just going for it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to do this. And this Fateful Findings is an independent film, came out in 2012. And what's great about his entry on Wikipedia is under the filmography thing, it has director, writer, producer, actor, editor, musical director, and then role. And it's supposed to be like a check mark, but it just says yes to all of them. He does every single thing on every movie. And it's outstanding. Thank you for bringing that to us.
Self-financed and put himself in an action role. Vanderhart, I think was his name. There's this movie called Get Even, aka Road to Revenge. And he does all his own stunts, all his own kung fu. And if you watch it, you'll totally believe it. And it's another one of those films where there's these extended lovemaking scenes also with an aged out porn actress. And there's one of my favorite films in there, or one of my favorite scenes in there was he did his lovemaking scene with the lady, and he's in a hot tub with her. Her bare jugs are out, and his eyes are just locked on them, and he's not going to look away. And you can see in this scene that he decided to use for the film, he's trying to burn the memory of this into his mind because he's scared to do this, and this might never happen again. He might never have a set of boobs in front of him like this again. And he wants to get everything out of it he possibly can, including putting full minutes of it into his film. Along with his soundtracking of it, he's also singing a duet with the actress, I think, while this whole scene is carrying on. And they play the whole song, show, several minutes of this footage. And, this is offset by all the action, too, where he shows off his kung fu skills. You guys, you really have to see this film.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
Films, this is where it's at.
I'm looking at some GIFs of it, or some trailers of it. It's really incredible. It's really shameless would be the word that I'm using. It's like he's like I'm not afraid. I'm just going to do this. This is really you brought some excellent movies to the table.
So I have a recommendation. Actually, it sounds like it might be right up your alley, Lucien. Have you heard of Burial Grounds from 1981?
Yes, I have. I don't think I played it at movie night though. I used to have like a special DVD edition of that one.
Oh, that's one of my favorites, with the 12-year-old boy who tries to have sex with his mom for no reason, and it's never explained or anything. But he also looks like he's like 50 years old too, and he's supposed to be 12. And apparently, he was a 25-year-old little person that they had hired to bypass Italian child labor laws. But that's one of my favorites because it's a zombie movie where the zombies get smarter but not faster. So they're just getting like bigger tools and better tools, but still just kind of using them the same way. It's pretty great. Yeah, it's cool that you've heard of that. Actually, not a lot of people. I bring that up.
It's funny that you brought up the Dracula movie that you accidentally streamed because I subscribe to a thing called Horror Pack, and they send me movies every month on like Blu-ray and stuff like that. And one of the ones that they sent me this month, I just got it like 2 days ago. I'm actually super jazzed that I got it because it's a piece of shit movie in the best way. It's Dario Argento's Dracula, and it's from 2012. Have you ever seen the Dario Argento version of Dracula, Lucian?
No, I don't even think I had heard of it. I saw the remake of Suspiria, but I had no idea that Argento made a Dracula film in 2012. It's crazy. I've loved some of Argento's stuff, though. And when I was in Italy, I was flipping through the channels one day, and just on daytime TV, there was an Argento film, and I was wondering, do they do this all the time over here?
Like, is it just? I
think Argento's stuff in Italy shows up kind of like Skinamax shows on for like us, where it's just like if you pop the TV on from like 11 p.m. to like 4 in the morning, they probably just throw Argento movies on there on Italian TV, just like, yeah, go ahead and just watch this. Because like when his movies are good, they're great, but when they're bad, they're amazing. Like it's one of the things like this.
Same with Fulci too. I forget the name of the Fulci film that was like a Dungeons and Dragons type thing. Oh, you have to look that up. But it was so over the top, you know. Like it didn't work in the same way the gore films do, because you know it was sword and sorcery. And you expect that to be a little tamer, even though there's swordplay and stuff like that. Not with him. I mean, he just took it so ridiculously over the top that it was just like that. It was hilarious.
Was it Conquest?
Yeah, it was Conquest.
Yeah.
That's funny because Fulci's movies are also kind of that, like exactly like you said, they're the same way. Because when they're bad, it's like I did a watch party with a bunch of friends, a bunch of horror friends too, and we watched Demons, his movie Demons, and like when he does stuff that's over the top, and like you can tell the budget is low, and you can tell that the practical effects are, you know, I'm not going to say they're phoned in, but you can tell they're done on a shoestring budget and stuff like that. It jumps it up to that upper echelon of just really fun bad movies, and Fulci is one of the masters of that. Because like again, when his are great, they're great, but man, when they're bad, like I can't stop watching them. And that's what happened with this Dracula one, because it's Dracula 3D. Like it's called Dracula 3D, and first off, you don't need to watch it in 3D in any way, shape, or form. I've done that. I highly do not recommend. It's one of those ones that's like the 3D.
Oh no, one of the worst. No, possibly the worst Dracula film though is the one with Coolio, and have to look that one up. It takes place in space. It's like it's just Dracula in outer space on a spaceship. Coolio is somewhere in the cast. And I actually considered playing this film for movie night during October. I was playing all Halloween films, and there was one time I was playing all Dracula films or whatever. This year, I decided that film was possibly too shitty for movie night. Because when you get a shitty film, you still want it to be paced, you know, in a way that it just doesn't bore the piss out of you, you know?
Sure.
There's certain types of bad film. And like Ed Wood, you know, he's the kind of the classic terrible film, but you notice his films were paced really well.
Sure.
You know, they hold your interest, and even when you're laughing at them, you're continually laughing at them. You're not reaching to turn it off, you know, and that's what I think sets Neil Breen's films apart too. I'm never watching Neil Breen's films, listening to this terrible dialogue, seeing this nonsensical plot come together and these ridiculous ideas. Him trying to cohere them. I'm never not entertained. You know, entertainment is what it's all about. You know?
Right.
I just don't feel that maybe this this Dracula in space film filled that requirement of being entertaining, but sometimes you play it with other people and different things affect them in different ways. And like I said, I'm somebody who can laugh at an 8-minute scene of a guy holding his bloody stump just because it becomes almost avant, you know, when are they going to cut this? And Neil Breen did that too. There's a scene in Neil Breen's film Double Down where he starts running ape shit. He just starts running towards the horizon. And I'm not sure what the point of it is, but he starts doing that. And I was watching this the first time and I was stoned and I was thinking like, okay, he's still running. And then I was saying to the person I was watching it with, I was like, I think we're going to see him make it all the way to the horizon here. You know? And as he kept running and as it goes on, it just got funnier and funnier that he was doing it. I was laughing. I practically had tears in my eyes. And he did it again in another movie of his where the soundtracking was going and he had like a drone or a high vantage point and he's panning over this lovely scenery. And of course he just doesn't want to let this lovely scenery go because he's trying to be a filmmaker and it's not quite working out. So he pans all the way one direction, the music comes to a stop and the camera stops. Then the camera starts moving the next direction, back the way it came, and the soundtrack just starts up again. And I guess you have to have the kind of sense of humor where once the soundtracking starts up again, it starts panning the other direction again. That has to strike you as funny for Neil Breen to be entertaining. Yeah. But it strikes me as absolutely hilarious and its ineptness.
It is. So are there any movies actually that you think got Satanism right?
I think the documentary Hail Satan, directed by Penny Lane, I think that's probably the best modern representation of Satanism that I have ever seen. And those guys, they have their shit together.
They really
agreed. Yeah.
Really
no, that's a really great answer. All right. So are there any movies that got the physical, your vision of Satan physically correct?
No, because I like the idea of Satan as being this kind of malleable character to the moment. It's kind of in line with our philosophy regarding ritual as well, where there's like these general parameters about the character, but given the occasion, you know, it calls for something different. And that is in line also with our kind of anti-autocratic philosophy, our procreativity, not procreation-ativity, but we're very much in favor of creativity and the arts. And, you know, that hasn't always been a given with religions, and especially the Abrahamic religions have often had an acrimonious relationship to art and artists, you know, whereas our headquarters houses an art gallery. And while some people think that might be arbitrary, it really isn't. You know, in order for things to be artistic, you need a certain amount of creative latitude, and we really allow that within the Satanic Temple. But I think there's some films that I think we probably all like that, if we're honest about it, really wreaked havoc upon our culture when it came to things like the Satanic Panic. And when I think of the devastation wrought by films like Rosemary's Baby or The Exorcist, you know, I almost hate to say it because I watched those films as a kid and I found them convincing, and I appreciate them as horror films. I really understand their place in the horror canon, you know, and you can't take that away from them. Just the same, people took these fictional narratives way too seriously, and I watch something like The Exorcist now, and it really looks like Catholic propaganda, you know. And I look at things like Rosemary's Baby, and I like that film as a younger person, and now all I can see is this kind of witch hunt narrative where they're maligning a fictional group of people, you know, fictional to them, Satanists, you know, but it never stays confined to a fictional group of Satanists, does it? You know, like, you can't say QAnon is benign because they're talking about Satanists who aren't there. They begin looking for their Satanists and people who aren't practicing what they say they are. And, you know, that you have them also looking to people like us who openly identify as Satanists and insisting that somewhere in the background these things are taking place. And to this day, I don't know the answer to that. You know, I think it goes too far to tell people they can't write fictional narratives that depict villains in this way, right? But just the same, you have to acknowledge the damage this kind of thing does in the minds of the ignorant.
Yeah, it's actually something I thought about a lot when I watched Sabrina, the Teenage Witch series, because, you know, they all worship Satan and everything, like the real deity and everything, but and they're all about evil, like Satan is evil, but then like
Right,
they're all
cannibalizing.
super progressive, like they're all like very inclusive and everything, and so it was a little confusing there. But I feel the same way about that you do about like The Exorcist and stuff, about like The Conjuring today, where they basically took the church and made them superheroes by the end.
What was weird about the new Conjuring movie was their promotional team wanted me to help promote it.
Really?
I mean, when I thought at first I was pissed off. When I saw the film, I was like, this is total Satanic Panic narrative stuff, and this is obviously the type of thing I'm going to push back at coming out today, especially when it's not what I considered a good film. So I thought, you know, for a moment I thought, who the fuck did this person think they were reaching out to me about this? But then I was thinking, like, you know, if I had been a marketer in the same position, I probably would have tried pulling the same bullshit.
Right.
It's a terrible case too for them to be promoting, because like somebody like clearly tried to, like, as a, like in the real life case, like the guy tried to argue that he was possessed by the devil for something that he clearly wasn't possessed by the devil, and he just killed somebody and he just wanted to try to like make it like that. And like there's like we all know the Warrens were full of shit, and like I can deal with the fake Warrens, the fictional Warrens, as sort of like whatever, and like it is what it is. But like when you start getting into like real cases that had like real actual like human tragedy surrounded by it, and like those things like that, then I start to go like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like it's one thing to go into the haunted house and the blah 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 blah, but it's another thing when like somebody like murdered somebody and then try to like utilize like supernatural bullshit to like their, you know what I mean?
Right. That's what I was going to say. At the point where you're trying to exonerate somebody for murder on the devil made him do it claim, something's wrong.
Right. Exactly. Like, I mean, maybe you should have prayed harder. I don't know what to tell you, but like, you got to go to jail now. I mean, like, it's like, I don't know what to say. I do want to bring up that how do you feel about the episode of Evil where there's like a fake representation of you? What do you think about that?
Holy shit. Well, I'm glad you asked, actually. What? Wait, you said that represents what?
I think they're trying to make it like a fake version of you in that episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. Oh, okay, I thought for a moment you bypassed representation of me for something else. That would have been funny.
Right.
I thought maybe you didn't know that they made a fictionalized me
I
on
know.
the show.
It's like,
But,
and I kind of liked the show up until then because it had cool imagery, and yes, it's a bit of Catholic propaganda and all that too, as well as all of it. But I can sort of put that aside for horror's sake a lot of times. Like, but ultimately, then all of a sudden, like a fake you was in it, and I was like, and then they did you wrong. I'm sorry.
They did do me wrong in ways that were kind of comical, because they turned it into this thing where I'm just, well, for one thing, they made me so that I'm claiming to be a theistic Satanist. So in the background, you know, I'm actually not theistic. I don't believe in this stuff, and it's all a ruse. When of course, in reality, like I'm upfront about everything. We're atheistic. We're non-theistic, but we believe that we have all the components that a religion needs to be a religion. I truly believe all of that. We have our ethics and everything else. There's no buy-in to becoming a member of the Satanic Temple. There's no tithing. There's no dues. So it's difficult to say that we're running some kind of financial scam. But in this show, you know, they had it so that we're doing all of this for t-shirt sales. which made no sense to me at all because we can sell fucking t-shirts anyways. We were selling t-shirts before we were IRS tax exempt. And in fact, we weren't going to seek IRS tax exemption until it became obvious that that was being held against us in the courts as being inauthentic as a religion and not recognized, you know. So it really came to a point where getting the tax exemption seemed necessary. And plus we do fulfill all those requirements. In the show, they had them determine that we don't because of the financial component of it, that we're making money off of these t-shirts, and it's in that show it's all going to the character who's supposed to be me. And so I knew that there was this show that made a fictional depiction of me. So I decided I would throw in the episode on a streaming movie night, and we'd all watch it together because I have this regular audience of people. And I hadn't watched it before because I was worried I wouldn't have a real sense of humor about it, because I get a lot of shit on the internet. I have a lot of conspiracy theorists making claims about me one way or the other, either that, you know, I can be anything from George Soros's communist lackey to a crypto fascist Nazi trying to infiltrate the liberal set of the cultural war kind of thing. So it comes from all over the place, and I'm really losing my sense of humor about it as time goes on. You know, I try to be thick-skinned and everything, and then knowing that there's a fictional depiction of me who's doing it all for the money, when literally I could have done anything else with my life earlier on and been more financially stable and secure and made more money, you know, that becomes a little hard to handle. But watching it with my movie night crowd, I thought, all right, maybe this will be funny. And we get to the point where fictional me, apropos of nothing, I've never watched the show before. This is the only episode I saw, so I don't know how this fit in with the broader narrative. But he just all of a sudden, out of the blue, is called upon by the show's main protagonist, I take it, you know, at least one of them, and she decides to fuck him. Yeah. So he fucks her. And we have watched a lot of depraved, weird things on movie night, and yet I have never felt more uncomfortable as I have in sitting there with somebody watching this fictional version of me fucking the protagonist of this show out of the blue.
Then she does you dirty. I don't know. And then she does you dirty too. She lies about it when you bring it up. Yeah, I don't.
So I assume they're going to bring me back at some point, and at that point, move from anything in my real life. But I thought, like, are they going to make it so she's pregnant? What are they going to do with this? You know?
Yeah, it's you should contact the actor, you know, see how that goes. But yeah, I just was like, it's funny because the show is actually like can be pretty good and has like amazing like imagery and stuff like that and stuff like, but they got to that and it was just like so ham-handed and so like poorly done on something that's like, you know, such like a hotbed subject. And I don't know, like I thought it was very disappointing. And yeah,
the show apparently lives in like a Catholic reality because like exorcisms are real. There's demons around and stuff like that.
Right.
It looks like a very Catholic universe that they're in, and you know, they're the only way they could. I don't know. I mean, there was no way they were going to. There was no way they were going to treat us appropriately in that kind of environment. But I kind of, you know, I ended up seeing it a second time, and it made me wonder if they were implying that something. I assume they have to get back to it because they showed the guy who was supposed to be my business partner in this. He's giving this service, right? And at some point they listen to a recording of it, and somebody says, "Now that sounds like a true believer," you know, indicating that there was something more going on. But they didn't come back to it. So I was wondering if like they're going to get back to this at some point, and the idea will be that even though we're disingenuous in what we say, we're playing with these powers that we don't understand and actually bringing evil into the world. And I think that's a very plausible narrative for them to go towards, because if we do engage with Catholics who are willing to speak with us and still hold these beliefs, that's typically what they think, you know.
Mhm.
If they're willing to take what we say at face value and realize that we're non-theistic, and really engage with us honestly, you know, honest on their terms. It's like, you know, accounting for their supernaturalism, you know, they understand that we're non-theistic, they understand how we see things, but they still believe that what we're doing has this supernatural influence that has a very negative consequence. And I think that might be where the show is going if they come back to me again.
I mean, I kind of hope they do, just because, like, I don't know, because it's like at least like interesting, and I'm like, I feel like party to that. But on the other hand, like it was so silly and so poorly done that.
But I have to admit, I watched this one episode where a character that's supposed to be me comes in and fucks the protagonist, and I thought, that's traumatizing for me. Like, this is awful. And yet now anything I watch, I'm thinking like, all right, now a me has to come in there and fuck all of them.
Right, like why can't this work out on every show? You know,
Now I'm used to it. Now I expect it. You know,
right?
Just like
Exactly.
when you get the VIP treatment, you know, and you're brought
Right.
to the head of the line, you're like, oh, come on, guys, I'm not special. Next time you're in line, you're like, this sucks.
Like, so I got bumped up to the first class once, just because I long story, but and then I rode in first class, and I'm like, I don't know how I could ever go back there again. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like the seats are so small. Like, will somebody close those fucking curtains, please? I'm tired of.
They don't account for you bringing your legs.
Exactly.
I want to live in an alternate reality now, Lucien, where you send a strongly worded email to the creators of evil being like, listen, first of all, I don't fuck like that. You've got it all wrong.
It was in a car.
I send the best strongly worded emails.
I bet.
I used to have that down to an art. I used to send them arbitrarily before I started doing, before the Satanic Temple was a thing. I used to send superfluous complaint letters to companies. And sometimes they just send me stuff too. I would complain about stupid advertising and things like that. I could put together a book of this stuff.
And they'd send you free stuff.
I should teach classes on strongly worded emails. I brought that to writing press releases for the Satanic Temple, and I think that really kickstarted us.
That's pretty awesome.
That's pretty good.
So I think we'll get into the sinister six, the big six opinion questions now. And you know, you can expand on your answers as much as you want, or you know, pass on some if you want, no problem. But the first one is Freddy or Jason.
I'm more for Freddy. I didn't see much. You know, I didn't really care much for the Jason backstory. You know, and then Jason morphed more and more throughout time into this more and more supernatural character. It became more like a Marvel superhero, where it was like, you know, I felt like the Marvel universe began to break down in the comics, and they, to their credit, they allowed it to break down in the movies too, in that way where it's like you have these kind of godlike characters now mixing with guys who just had, like, you know, a little better technology and were taking on vigilantism, you know, and then you're trying to make an equal playing field once that they all start, you know, mixing with one another. So now Captain America's as strong as Thor and all that other bullshit. And I felt like, you know, Jason was another one of those characters that just kept getting stronger and more unkillable and everything. And it's like, I don't know, in my mind, you don't need that in a slasher character. You know, you just need somebody who's psychopathic and willing to kill. You know, and I felt like there's a certain power in having a character that's not unkillable. Like, then you might as well just give up. You know what I mean? It's like Superman. He was never an interesting character because it's like, where's the struggle? You know what I mean? Somebody has to go find kryptonite somewhere or synthesize it. It's really predictable. You know, there's no struggle, and it's similar. It became similar for Jason. There was you know, Freddy was in his way kind of unkillable as well, and a supernatural character. But he started out supernatural, and he played upon people's unconscious fears and stuff. And I just felt like there was more room for storytelling that way, and more room for universe building.
No, yeah, that's a good point.
And I strongly agree on the too powerful thing. It's why Superman, the Hulk, and Wolverine movies all have like the same deal. Like they either have to have them weakened, or they have to fight somebody of the same caliber. Otherwise, they'll just destroy it. And unfortunately, though, then it sort of like negates like the purpose of them being so powerful. I don't know. Like it's a weird thing. Like they're fun to like have on the team, but like, and to like think about that. But like, if every story has to revolve around them, like now finding somebody equally comparable, then what's the point of them? I don't know. You know, it's like.
Yeah.
Right, and then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger to the point where it's like their storytelling can't sustain it anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then people start dying and coming back from death, and that's when you know it's over.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, number 2. What's the difference between a thriller and a horror?
A thriller is more dependent upon suspense, and I think that, I think thrillers are more successful in the theaters because it's hard to emulate or evoke real fear in people, and you do that, with depending on how successful the jump starts are and things like that, and just the kind of terror in the scenario type of thing. But a thriller can have more of a mystery component to it, and are often more psychological. And I feel like one of the better horror film series of our time, which people probably don't recognize as such or probably don't consider as such, was the Chernobyl series on HBO. And that was almost a masterpiece in depression, more than anything else. But I really felt like they did a great job of showing just how horrific. There wasn't a suspense to it. You knew what was happening, and you knew it was going to happen. You knew the danger involved, and I think that's the difference. But it was horrifying, and it was and it's horrific to see the outcome of that. So it doesn't always depend upon some psychotic anti-human character. It can, be just dependent on such conditions, that aren't amenable to human life. And certainly if something's plausible or true, that can be all the more horrific still.
Yeah, no, that's a great, good. I like that you brought up Chernobyl as a horror. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
All right. What horror movie influenced your taste the most?
The horror films that influenced my tastes, this is going to make me sound like a real old fart, but I think what must have earliest set the tone for me were films I didn't even find scary at all, but were, the Universal horror films. I really liked those. I'm talking like 5 years old now. And like the Blob films too, like when I was that age, really resonated for me for some reason too. There was just, this creeping faceless horror is overtaking everything and growing bigger the more it destroyed. And depending on where you were at, you could find yourself in a situation where there was no escape because it would envelop the entire bowling alley, like in the Blob 2. Certain different concepts really struck me as effective earlier on. There was a Hammer horror werewolf film. I don't remember if it was Mark of the Werewolf or I remember the environments and the look of it, but I'm not sure what. I think maybe it was The Legend of the Wolfman or something like that. But there was just this scene where a man.
Are you talking about Curse of the Werewolf?
Yes, he's caught in a prison cell.
Yep.
And he has a prison mate, and he's telling the prison mate, like, shit's about to go really south here for you because you're locked in this cell with me, and in the full moon, I'm going to become a werewolf. And the guy is like, oh, come on, fuck off, you know, like get ready for a night of romance or whatever. And, you know, the full moon comes out and the guy starts sweating and convulsing and stuff. And his cellmate's getting increasingly worried. And, you know, that whole thing struck me as really effective as a kid. That idea of being locked in the room with the guy, you know, and that struck me as also the most powerful part of Bram Stoker's Dracula when I read it too. Everybody on the ship that was moving the vampire to London, and he was killing the crew one by one. They were his food supply, you know, and they would see him at night. And I thought, you know, it was just, I just thought it was, I think it was more the concept, and that it struck me at the right time, at the right age, you know, where I understood the concept, and therefore it was horrific, even though it was done in an old film with not the best special effects, you know?
Sure. If you could erase one movie from existence, what would it be?
If I could erase a film from existence, wow. You know, I guess a lot of people would look at like some of the Riefenstahl films, like Triumph of the Will, and look at its role in motivating, you know, the Nazis during World War II, and say, you know, they would get rid of that film. But I don't know. I doubt that would have a really significant effect. And it's hard to say, you know, without being able to look back in time and reverse engineer it, you know, what films have caused what kind of devastation due to what people's beliefs. But I gave that kind of limited insight into, you know, the double whammy of The Exorcist and the popularity of Rosemary's Baby, and helping inform the Satanic Panic that came after that. So I'm gonna have to pass on that, not because I don't find it an interesting question or I don't have opinions, but I feel like if we thought about it hard enough, there'd be a whole lot of films.
For sure.
But then you're acting as a retrospective censor too. So
that's true. Yeah, that's why we have people pass on that one. Yeah, I said Scream, and I love Scream, but I just also love chaos. And I think Scream did so much for the horror genre, it would be completely different if it never happened. So that's why I don't actually think that Scream should be erased.
You pulled a Thanos snap with the Scream one.
Yeah,
that would remove so much shit. It's so funny 100%. Because that, out of all the questions that we ask on this one, honestly, that one people pass the most on. And I mean, that for sure makes sense because it's, you know, that's a tough one. But your answer also on that was kind of perfect too, because like you can go the opposite way on it. You can either get rid of nothing or get rid of so many things.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
Just so many things.
Yeah, you can either like respect art and erase nothing, or like just go into a lot of problematic movies. But anyway.
I think it's the Rob Zombie Halloween movies, and I'm fine with whatever that happens. I'm good with it. So like, I think there's nothing worse than we didn't get stronger as a people with those movies. So I'm fine.
Oh no, and I got to admit, yeah, I kind of broached this topic with my movie night crowd about Rob Zombie's films, and I love the idea of his films. He'll do these interviews, and I'll think this is going to be a great film. And then I watch it, and I'm like, not so much.
Yeah.
I'm really disappointed about the fact that he's doing the Munsters. I just feel like, God damn it, leave the Munsters alone.
Yeah,
it's the worst. It's the worst news.
And if he did, you know, and I wouldn't care as much if he didn't put like, and it's like, whatever, like you love your wife and you want to put whoever you want in your movies and all, but there's also this weird like nepotism factor of it and stuff like that. But she just shouldn't be Lily Munster. She can do something else in the movie, but like give the opportunity to another actor. There are plenty of women out there who have worked their way up to get these starring roles and the very few starring roles in horror, and and like give it to somebody. I don't know. That's just my take on it. And
well, if his history is any measure, none of these up and coming actors are missing out by not being in it.
For sure.
That's a good point.
And I'm just always like hey, let's give people a shot. You know what I mean? Like, let's let people like get some IMDb.
Well, with that in mind, people have wised up a little bit. It seems, at least more so than before, to letting people who like actually have some of the characteristics of the person they're playing play the role, like rather than the famous Hollywood person like trying to, say emulate a Russian accent, or having their arm CGI'd off rather than getting somebody who is somebody who's actually missing an arm or whatever. Because I don't think I'm a good actor, but I think there's a lot of people who are, to the point where I think a lot more people could do it and do a good job than we allow for when we have the same, small set of Hollywood people in films all the time.
Right. Absolutely. Are ghosts real?
Oh, well, this gets very philosophical, doesn't it? Like, I don't think like actual manifestations of that contain the consciousness of somebody who was previously alive manifest themselves in physical environments and make themselves known. But I do think there's a lot of anomalous experiences people have that can very much convince them of these types of things because they have no other context for which to view it through. So I while I don't think ghosts are real, that's not to say I think people who do ghost hunting and explore paranormal things are all lying or, running a scam or anything like that. I know a lot of people who get into paranormal stuff and do like ghost hunting type things and things like that. And a lot of times I think people find that there's, like when it comes to the haunted house idea, that there's old houses and there's a lot of things you don't account for with an old house in a lot of ways in which, the old house settling or other such things, electrical problems or whatever, can manifest themselves in ways that are unexpected, that people interpret as having some kind of conscious intervention.
For sure.
Great.
Yeah, Ryan actually brings up all the time, like he went to Loch Ness and he doesn't believe in Loch Ness, but spent the whole time looking for Loch Ness.
Right, like
he wants to believe, but
yeah, like yeah. I want there to be a Loch Ness monster. I want there to be ghosts. I gotta tell you, because like when I was a kid and I sort of believed in all that, like the Ouija board was real fun. Now, as a skeptic and an atheist, like Ouija board's boring as fuck. Like it really is. Like you want to bust it out and be like, let's have some fun, and then you're like, then it's not moving, and you're like, maybe I should ask it differently. And you're like, oh wait, that's not how any of this works. So I don't like, I don't know what I don't like. Yeah, like I still want there to be fun in life of mystery and stuff like that, and I sometimes don't let my factual reality over. Like I know there's no Loch Ness monster. I know it, but goddamn.
Oh yeah, but just the same, like yeah. If you hear that people are seeing something big intermittently in the water and you can't see the bottom, you can't tell me that you're floating out there feeling entirely comfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting. Yeah.
It's a great place too. I strongly suggest anybody go there and take a boat ride because it's beautiful. And Scotland, big shout out to Scotland. They're an amazing country. So.
Last one, Midsummer or Hereditary?
You know what? I never saw Hereditary. I know the I like the soundtracking for Hereditary. I forget the name of the guy, but Hereditary soundtracking was really good. And Midsummer, when I saw that, I was not in the mood for it, and I felt like the slow pans over the environment and like the camera following the character thing, I was not in the mood for that. So I would have to watch it again to see if it really clicked for me. But and that's where I really differ with a lot of my peers. A lot of people around me who like the same things I liked Midsummer a lot, and I just did not get into it.
Sure,
I can understand that, like I'm like, I love A24 movies, like I love them, but like I have to be in the right mood for it. I can't just slap it. I think I'm more in the your camp, which with like 90% of the time I just slap on a something just kind of fun and something sort of like, something I can enjoy. And like if I want to like sit down and
something that won't disappoint you, because disappointment is the point.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'd be very, very interested to hear what your thoughts are on Hereditary once you do see it, because it's a very interesting movie for all sorts of different reasons. But from the spiritual aspect of it, there's a lot of really insane shit that happens in the movie. So I'd be super curious to hear what your thoughts are on that when you actually do watch it.
Yeah, I will check it out for sure. It is kind of an oversight of mine that I let that one cruise by.
There's some really great imagery in that movie, and some really kind of like really fucked up moments that are pretty awesome. So I'm a Hereditary person. I think Midsummer is good, but it's definitely like I got to sit down and get ready to watch it sort of movie. So.
And also the director's cut, which I would always recommend, is like 3 hours long. So it's not an easy one to just sit down and watch.
And they're also vastly different movies. Like the thing with Ari Aster is the way that they're both his movies. Sometimes directors have a signature or whatever. Those are such different films energetically. That I think it's actually just interesting in that sense, because the fact that those are his first two movies and they're so vastly different is very interesting to me. But you can tell that, like, he's going to be a legendary director, like even just based off his first two movies.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an awesome episode, Lucien.
Super awesome.
Yeah, we really appreciate you making time for us. This is the part of the episode where we do any recommendations. So we usually go first and let our guests take us out. So if you got anything musically, movie wise, anything else, I came up with green onions once, because if you put green onions are like 79 cents, and if you put them in your meal, it makes like your meal like $10 better. Just anything you can think of on that you're into lately.
No, I just have a belated zinger.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay.
Well, maybe he can teach Rob Zombie a thing or two about directing.
You know what? Listen, Rob Zombie needs to do two things. He needs to only give his wife vanity parts, just like quick vanity parts. That's fine. And also, he needs to stop making every single movie that he makes about incest in some way, because I swear to God, if the monsters fuck each other, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to lose my mind.
They're so gonna.
Yeah.
100%. All right, you want me to just go first?
Go for it, man.
Yep.
All right, I only have one, I think, this week. It's Human Impact. They're sort of like an industrial rock band, very aggressive, super good. I just saw them last night live at Market Hotel in Brooklyn, and Market Hotel is actually a really great venue too. So if you see any shows, I recommend that place too. It does not look like a venue from the outside.
Doesn't sound like a venue either.
No, it sounds like a hotel. It was super weird.
Yeah.
And it's like a triangle shape. And actually behind the band, there's a huge window, and you can see the J train go by like every few minutes. It was kind of cool watching these bands just like tear it apart, and then the train go by in the background every once in a while. So yeah, Human Impact. It's members of Unsane, Cop Shoe Cop, and Swans. and this is their new band. They already have 2 records out. Both of them are super good. Check that out.
Very cool. I got a couple of recommendations this time. First off, one thing I wanted to mention, Lucien, the first time I saw you was actually at What the Fest here in New York, when you did the Q&A with Maria after the Hail Satan documentary. So
I remember.
Yeah, that was a really cool thing. So it was really cool for you to come on the show and everything, and like, you know, have us talk to you on this. Aside from just what I had seen from the Q&A, like everything you talked about was really cool with this. And obviously the documentary is incredible and people should watch that. But I will do a couple of other recommendations really quick. 2 movies that are on opposite sides of the spectrum of the same scenario. The first one is the good one. It's called Tailgate, and it's on Shudder. And it's a road rage movie it's a Dutch road rage movie. And it's awesome. It's like a road rage slasher. Very, very cool movie. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum of road rage movies, this one is so bad that it's good, and it's called Unhinged, and it stars Fat Russell Crowe, and it's awesome because it's super, super terrible, but super fun as well. And then music, the new Emigrate album. I just watched that. Yeah. Emigrate, that one just dropped, I think like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, or something like that. So check that out as well.
The Rammstein side project?
Yeah, it's the Rammstein side project. And it's interesting because it doesn't sound like Rammstein at all. Like, it's his own thing. It's like, the best way to put it is like it's a modernized take on like 80s synth metal. So it's not industrial like Rammstein is. It's definitely got more of like an 80s, like almost synth pop mixed with heavy metal. And it's very cool. It sounds very, very cool. So.
I am going to, we had our friend Johnny Taylor on earlier this week. And he said to say hi, Lucien. I think you did his podcast too.
I did, yeah.
Well,
hello to Johnny Taylor.
Yeah, he is. He's a good dude, good friend of ours. I recommended Odd Future, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to recommend early Odd Future stuff. And revisit it all. It's all so good. Please go to YouTube and search Odd Future Fallon. It's
super good.
It's super good. It's like one of the best live performances ever on Jimmy Fallon, no less.
Yeah.
They kind of treat Jimmy pretty funny. Tyler, the creator, like jumps on. And it's actually their first television performance, and I just think it's incredibly talented. It's a horror themed. I know Tyler hates when they're called horrorcore, but I'm just going to. It's a horror themed production on the stage, and it's just very, very, very good. Check that out. Movie wise, I'm going to suggest Random Acts of Violence, that is on Shudder. It is absolutely dear Shudder, by the way, I'm having trouble with your app on my Roku. It keeps logging itself out, and then I have to reinstall it. So Shudder folks, please help me. You're my only hope. But Random Acts of Violence is very good. Covers some of my favorite stuff, comic books and slasher horror, and how they combine. It's about a comic book writer who writes a comic book about a slasher, and somebody is doing the slashing from the comic books on it. So that's very good. I strongly suggest it. Good, solid, well-paced slasher flick, good gore and stuff. And I'm going to recommend a book this week that I'd like to say I'm reading, but I'm actually like listening to it because I drive a lot for work right now. It is Anoka. It's a collection of indigenous horror by Shane Hawk. He's a indigenous horror writer, and it's a collection of he's got a bunch of stuff out, but it's a collection of his stories, and it's a damn good introduction to his work. So please dig in. Anoka by Shane Hawk. Lucien, what do you got?
Check out my friend Jason Lennox. I guess look him up on Twitter or look up his name. He's coming out with the Satanic coloring book, which I contributed art to. Certainly look at the products and books of Shiva Honey. She's, she did guest vocals on Satanic Planet, and she's put out a satanic book on death and dying, and she's also put out a book of ritual practices for Satanism. And also check out the new book by Lilith Starr. She's another one of ours from Seattle, and she recently wrote a book about what it is like being a TST Satanist. And really check out this band Satanic Planet. I think they did a really great, a really great first album, and hoping that we can get on the road and do some live shows and make people more aware of this project. I think it'll really find its crowd.
Yeah, that would be a great live show too. Super fun.
Yeah, I really can't wait.
So one question I do have right before we go is when is the best time to say Hail Satan? As a hello, as a goodbye, or just when you feel like it?
No, the best time is when you're at the family gathering before like Thanksgiving dinner or
right.
Christmas morning. Scream it out.
Yes.
When grandma tells you to say grace when you don't want to, just be like, all right, you know what? Fine. You want me to say grace? I got you, grandma.
Yeah. But I have noticed it seems like people say Hail Satan more when they're signing off than when they sign on.
Right. Okay.
It's not so much. It seems like it's less a greeting as it is a farewell.
Yeah. I think it could be both, but I didn't want, I just wondered, if it's so. Anyways, thank you so much for your time, and keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing in Texas. I hope that's going good. I meant to dig into that today, but where can people support you? Where can people help your fight to because you're fighting a good fight in Texas about against the anti-woman bill and all that. So where can they do that? Yeah,
check out our website, thesatanictemple.com. Don't forget to put the in the full URL. It's thesatanictemple.com. I hate Facebook with a passion, and I wish the company would be utterly destroyed and Mark Zuckerberg would be thrown in prison. But
right.
I have an account on there, a fan account, but that's mostly because that site has held me hostage to the fact that they won't pull down imposter accounts if I were to delete it.
Right.
But I am active on Twitter, so I can be found there, and people can kind of keep up with me and us in that way. Cool. I also have a Patreon page, which is kind of how I make my income. You can read this stuff there without paying anything, but if you are able, to subscribe and throw in any amounts, that's appreciated too.
Awesome.
So go to the Satanic Temple, do their Patreon, and then go to ours and do our newly released Patreon too. Because so we can bring you more excellence. Not that we'll stop, but we have some cool stuff on there. We just released that this week. Go check it out. Big thank you to all of our listeners. We are getting more and more every day, the amount in the first hour or two of dropping a new episode is blowing my mind. So thank you to all our listeners for tuning in and making this a reality like this. To be able to talk to amazing people like Lucien and all the people that we've talked to lately is absolutely great. And if you're listening to us for the first time, we have tons of great content back at it. Go check out our Justin Pearson episode where we talk more about Satanic Planet. Go to listen to our Kyle Kinane episode where we discuss, with one of the funniest guys alive. We have so much great stuff out there. We have, and we're really glad to be part of this and do it. If you have suggestions, leave them on it. And most of all, a big during this holiday season, or anytime. But if you are having a tough time and the narrative of life doesn't fit with the narrative of your supposed life doesn't fit with your real life, and you're having a tough time, please reach out to us. We would love to talk to you, and take care of yourself. This is a tough time of year for a lot of people, and we are here to support each other, and we all do this together. We love you all, and please take care of yourself. Go start some fires, break some glass, and hail Satan.
Hail Satan.
Jonas.
Hail Satan.
Can we get one from Lucien just because?
Hail Satan.
There we go.
Thank you very much. Perfect. Y'all take care. Thank you.